So you're in the playlist of my talks, Emotional Eating Solutions. And I just wanted to drop in for a second with the Stibian story to let you know that emotional eating is an everyday occurrence. It's not really dramatic. It's not only something that we do when we're suffering from immense grief or a boyfriend breakup. That's often how we see it on TV. Often it's minor discomforts that are minor, like quite nuanced emotions that are triggering it. And so it's not really necessary to feel everything intensely in order to process and find a way out of emotional eating. So during lockdown, I lived in a village called Stibians. We were building our house here, and so we rented the flat above the village shop. And the flat above the village shop was interesting because it had a living room that was right above the shop front, and then it had a long corridor that went all the way down to the kitchen, which was far at the other end of the flat. It was a very peculiar shape. It suited us perfectly. Now, I set up my working from home station, my desk, by a window in the front room because I like looking out on the sort of what it essentially feels like the center, the heart of the village, and watching people come and go while I worked. But I was doing some part-time work for a university at the time, and I found myself walking this corridor up and down a lot. I'd go down the corridor into the kitchen, open the cupboard, and see if there were any chocolate chips from our baking stash in the cupboard. Have a couple of chocolate chips. Take them in my hands, back down the corridor, sit down. Now, at a certain point in my job, it came that moment to have like a personal appraisal development review, and you had to tick a lot of boxes about what you were good at and what your strengths and weaknesses were. And I knew I found myself very tearful and very reluctant to do this process because I knew that my time management was really quite wayward, and I didn't really know why I was so unfocused. When I started, though, to look at my eating and what was behind my eating, I realized that I actually had a lot of trepidation about the little tasks that I'd set myself to do in this job. A lot of self-doubt. I don't quite know how to do this, or will other people like what I'm doing, or am I getting this right, or am I doing this the way it's supposed to be done, or am I delivering on my promises to this job? And so every time I was having these little bits of self-doubt, they were kind of in the way of me sitting down to work. And instead of just sitting down and feeling my emotions, which were a bit insecure, I was walking down the corridor, getting myself something to prop myself up, almost like a comfort blanket of like, right, I'll just have this and then I'll sit down to work. I'll just have this and this will help me. This will give me energy. This will help me focus. So sometimes, I guess what I'm trying to say is that even little emotions, like a little bit of boredom or a little bit of self-doubt, a little bit of insecurity, maybe rushing, maybe the sense of a deadline, or a little bit of worry about, different aspects of how we're supposed to live up to our own expectations. These are the kinds of emotions that we really want to bring onto our radar because they live really in our unconscious, because they're not very like shouty, right? And they're not going to make us cry. They're just putting us in a slight unease, and that's where we reach for food, to buy us a bit of time, to give us a little bit of a sense of groundedness or hold on to something whilst we're buffeted a little bit around in our state of insecurity. I wonder if that resonates with you at all. So we've looked at the background, cognitive behavioral therapy, thoughts create emotions and emotions create actions. And we've got this understanding that emotional eating is an everyday occurrence. And with these, armed with these two things, let's dive in and explore what emotional eating actually is.